Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying.
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Monday, September 11th. Everybody in the remembrance of all those events of September 11th. Also, my wife's birthday. Always makes that a little bit interesting. Also, most of my family has COVID, just not me. I'm locked in this room, might have to stay here for the next week. So that's what's going on. But the LA Galaxy, 2-2 come from behind draw against St. Louis in a feisty little match. Good second half, poor first half. We've seen a lot of that before. We're going to talk about all the injuries, all the stuff that's going on, and whether or not that was a good game or not. Did the Galaxy save their season just by coming back in that game? Maybe. We'll talk about it. We got a bunch to talk about as well. Trafico week is headed up, and we're going to be joined here in just a couple minutes by everybody's favorite soccer mom, Miss Sarah Neal, Jalen Neal's mom. So we got a lot to talk about, a lot of fun things planned our way. To help me do all that, he's back. It's Kevin the Panda Baxter. Kev, how's it going, bud?
Did you just say you're the only one in the house without COVID?
Right now? Yeah. I've been dodging.
You know what that means?
What does that mean?
That means you got COVID now.
No, I don't. No. That would be false, incorrect, not a true statement at all. I'm gonna dodge this. I'm telling you right now, I'm dodging it. I feel good. I'm dodging it.
Well, hey, did your screen just freeze? I'm frozen here. Are you frozen?
Your side is frozen, like normal.
Okay.
Again, it's mostly your computer. So
yeah, it's got I got the new thing on here.
Yeah.
And now I just have the little spinny thing.
Yeah, I can still hear you, so we're fine. We'll just let it roll for a little bit. All right.
So we missed you. We missed you Sunday.
Yeah. I asked my wife, I'm like, hey, so you think I could go to that game? I've been testing negative, and I've gone through, like $700 worth of shots and all that fun stuff of tests and however all that stuff's over. So I was cleared. I was going to go and wear my mask and do the whole thing, and my wife was like, I don't feel good. You should probably stay. And so instead, I got to stay home and watch it from the comfort of this room. Interesting game overall. We're going to talk about a whole bunch, but yeah, I mean, it was another weird game for the Galaxy, and I guess with the battle of attrition they're currently fighting, it's not really a surprise. So that's interesting. Before we even get anywhere, though, we haven't talked about, and certainly I haven't talked about, I got to talk a little bit about Tom Braun and him coming in and really what the LA Galaxy were trying to do with Tom Braun and that whole thing. But Kevin, we haven't really got to talk to you about Tom Braun. So what did you think about the LA Galaxy's announcement? I know we privately said we weren't that surprised, right?
Well, no, I wasn't surprised. I expected this a long time ago. I expected it actually, almost, I think when he had the Soccer Champions Tour and sold 93,000 tickets at the Rose Bowl and put that whole thing together. I thought that was huge. You got all these big European teams. Yeah, there were other people that worked with him, but my understanding was AEG, that he was the lead guy on that. That pulled that together. That was a big, prestigious thing that made AEG a lot of money, sort of stamped them as the soccer property on the West Coast again. At that time, it just seemed like he was the guy in waiting. And there was a lot, as we know, and we'll talk about again. There was a lot going on with Chris Klein. There was a feeling they couldn't, give in to the fan protests and push him aside. But Tom Braun was right there. I think the big takeaway for me is my understanding is this is the first time, or at least the first time in recent memory, that the Galaxy do not have a president over the whole operation. They have a business side and a sporting side. And I think that's a real big step forward. I think that was very necessary. And, the departure of Chris Klein allowed them to do that. And they were really lucky they had a guy like Tom Braun just waiting right there.
Yeah,
I think it's a great hire.
Well, I mean, the bottom line, though, is that he's been in this role for however long, since Chris Klein got suspended, probably, right? I mean, really, Tom Braun has already... So where's the change? Where's the different ideas? Where's somebody who's going to come in and sort of that overarching thing? Right now, the overarching reach for that is Dan Beckerman. He's in charge of everything, because when there's two guys at the top, and Tom even said... I'm not going to make soccer decisions, so it's up to Greg Vanney. So you and I always talk about it. Sometimes soccer decisions come down to business decisions and soccer decisions, right? So does a soccer decision get to overrule business decision every time? Because that's sort of how Tom let it to be believed. If it's about a player, he can only present the business side of it and doesn't necessarily have the decision on that.
Well, yes and no. A couple of things. I mean, when he put this Champions Tour together, he spent a lot of money that he didn't have, and they did that on the belief that they would make money. So there's a way that he could do that. That's one. I think you say what changes. Well, Chris Klein is out of the way. Tom Braun can do what he wants. I think there was an awful lot of, hey, Chris, I got this great idea, and it just never went anywhere. And then Dan Beckerman, it does play a big role in this. I'm not expecting any great ideas from Dan Beckerman, but what I am expecting that if Greg wants to go sign a player and Tom can't make that revenue from the Galaxy pot, I expect Dan Beckerman to say, hey, AEG's got you covered. We'll get this done. But, there are a lot of things that need to be done. The season ticket base has really slipped lately. There hasn't been a lot of creative things. This is the 4th of July fireworks. They've done that for 29 straight seasons.
It was at the Rose Bowl this time, however.
That was good. And who set that up? So there's a lot of... Yes. There's a lot of things that can be done. And they have a new creative team in there, a new social media team. So I think the team has finally, the franchise has finally realized that they've kind of been stuck in neutral for an awful long time, on and off the field. And you got some new people over in the soccer, on the soccer side, some new energy over in the business and community relations side and social media side. I kind of expect that we're going to see a lot of things going forward. I don't think there's going to be a complete rebrand, but I think if you go to sleep now and wake up in a year, I think you're going to notice the Galaxy is a totally different organization.
It'll be interesting. I mean, obviously, it's all there to play, right? It's one of those things. You give them the ball, you let them go take it down the field and sort of see what happens. All the injuries certainly not helping the LA Galaxy. That's been something we've been watching and been talking about. I was joking because I was watching a little of Monday Night Football, of course, the first one this year, and Aaron Rodgers got hurt in the first quarter after being the guy who was going to save the Jets franchise. And I just wanted to know, is Chris Klein a Jets fan? Has the curse fallen over to Aaron Rodgers? Because already doesn't look great, although apparently the x-rays were negative, so perhaps he's back sooner rather than later. But first quarter into the franchise-defining era for Aaron Rodgers, I just feel like that's such a Galaxy thing to have happen right now, right?
Yeah, he's like the Jets' Riqui Puig.
Exactly. Well, I mean, yeah, up to a certain point, maybe it would be more like if it was Zlatan coming in, but Zlatan got hurt the first game into the definition of everything. You know what I mean? That's sort of what I was thinking in all this stuff. It just seems unlucky, and I was watching Monday Night Football. So I don't want to get too far off base, but we do have our special guest for tonight, and we're really glad to have her. Kev, you and I have been talking about having Sarah on the show so many times, and you mentioned now's the time, and I agree now is the time. So welcome to the show, Miss Sarah Neal, everybody's favorite soccer mom. Is that a fair thing to say, Sarah?
Well, calling me a soccer mom, yes, definitely. I hope I'm everybody's favorite.
You're our favorite.
Yeah. I was gonna say if we get a vote, we get to say. I've been around this team for 15 years. I know you guys have been watching the team since Jalen was a young whippersnapper and all that fun stuff that's going on. But
he still is a young whippersnapper.
Yeah, I know he's way younger than us, Kev. But it's one of those things where I don't know that I've ever seen a parent integrate themselves into the social fabric of a club and its fans more than you.
And I have to take my hat off. It's fun to watch. You get to interact with so many fans. You have so many wonderful causes, and hopefully we'll get to talk about all of them here. How did that happen? Is that a fair question to ask? Oh, hold on one second. Let's see. Hold on. The Bluetooth connection bounced out for a second. Go ahead. Now we can hear you.
Okay. I have to give a little shout out to Chris Tucker, who really got me into Twitter. I saw something that he was a fan of Jalen when Jalen played in Academy, and I reached out just to thank him, because that was really touching, and then it just took off from there, really.
Yeah. Chris has that effect on people. It's talking about somebody who's embedded in the social fabric of the LA Galaxy. I mean, it's one thing though. I think a lot of times if you have players, and maybe it's because of Jalen's age, maybe it comes into the fact that whenever he first started making waves in the LA Galaxy and in the Academy in that Galaxy 2 era, he's fairly young, and you have a parent out there. I would say that most guys probably wouldn't love to have their parent out there forward. How does Jalen handle all of this?
Well, you'd probably have to ask Jalen, but I think he accepts it. I try my very hardest not to embarrass him. I've gotten better at knowing what to say and what not to say, especially on social media.
Right.
But I think he appreciates the support, and he knows how I am. I'm like this with all 4 of my kids.
Okay, right. That's so they're all used to it. They probably have meetings all by themselves where they say, "Hey,
yeah.
did mom do this?" That type of thing. Kev, go ahead.
Well, Josh, I'm going to make you feel old. Do you know that Jalen was 5 years old when you started working with the Galaxy and your Corner of the Galaxy podcast?
Yeah, that sounds about right, Kev. Thanks, I appreciate that. That's what I needed tonight.
So, Mom, tell us about your ticket deal. I've been following you on social media, speaking of social media, and all this ticket stuff you're doing. It sounds really amazing. Can you kind of explain to us exactly what's going on and how it's working, how people can help?
Yeah, so I know I'm so grateful for all of the help and donations, because it wouldn't happen if I didn't get help from others. So let me just preface by saying that. So I had an idea with Jalen last year that, it's always been very important for us to make sure that everybody has access to games. Back when Jalen and his older brother were little, I didn't have a lot of money, and going to Galaxy games was affordable for me. That's something that we could do as a family. And I want to and then Jalen got to walk out with AJ, and he got to play on the field. And I really feel like, other kids need that inspiration. They need to see a professional game, see their idols out there, get to meet them. So I contacted Galaxy, and I said, how much would it cost if I were to buy like season tickets or something? And I worked with the foundation, and they agreed to donate tickets to me every game. So they donate a large chunk of tickets, and then it caught on, and other people just donated, and now I think I'm up to 142 families this year.
Just this year,
Wow.
142
Just
families.
this year. Yeah, just this season.
And so that ends up being, I think you were saying it was like 400 and something people whenever you sort of really start to multiply that out, right?
Yeah, I was adding it up on Access of all the tickets, and I blew myself away because I didn't know it was that many.
Yeah.
So that's how many people have gotten to go to Galaxy games this year because of you that otherwise would not have been able to attend a game.
Yeah, I try really hard to make sure that a majority of people haven't been to games. Some are people who currently go and maybe couldn't afford to go to a game, or just money's tight, and I pass those on too.
Well, it's an incredible feat to even attempt something like that. And being someone who occasionally gets tickets they have to give away, I'm sure you have all your fun and frustrations with the Access ticket system as well, trying to get people tickets and all that fun stuff. So that is you have overcome the technology, which is always nice, always nice as well. But I mean, so you've done that, but there's also more, because recently you had another fundraiser, and these seem to pop up all the time, and they always seem to be, you always seem to be behind them, which I think is great because again, you have a voice, you know how to use it, and you're doing something. So I saw this tweet, and I'll pop it up on the screen. It says, you were looking to sort of help your oldest plays for a team called Problems FC, right? And
yes.
You said there's a lot of incredible players, but they're not seen, right? There's no way to get them into like the best tournaments. That way they can be seen. So these guys are getting overlooked by scouts. They're getting overlooked in soccer-rich Southern California, and these guys could be the next Jalen Neal. These guys could be the next Landon Donovan, but you're never going to know because they're not getting discovered. Is that sort of the idea behind it?
Absolutely. Yep.
And so you decided to raise money for these guys. Tell us about that.
So yes, I agree. There's, and not just with this, but just, I could go on for hours about the whole pay to play system, but,
right.
With these young men, they work so incredibly hard and they're so passionate about the sport and yet still have other lives. They have families, they're, early to mid 20s. They work jobs, 1-2 jobs. And then, it's still really hard for them to pay the league fees. It comes to about $250 to $300 a player per season. And, that doesn't sound like much, but it is when you're young and you have a family and responsibilities. So I just, I know that they were having some issues paying, and I didn't want that to stop them from achieving their dreams.
And so you put a goal 2,300 up there. I remember whenever it was about 300. And you were really excited because you're like, hey, we got a player. We got a player in there. I was like, wait a minute, we can do better than that. So I retweeted it. I know other people retweeted it as well. So now you're at, I think just before I came on, $2,400 of your $2,300 goal. So that is now what, like 10 players? Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So we can cover 10 players. I reached out to the coach this afternoon and I was like, well, tell almost the entire field that they're covered. Yeah,
except for that goalkeeper. They're weird anyway, so you can make them pay their own way. So that's fine. No, the GoFundMe is still up there. You can go to Sarah's Twitter and you can still donate. And let's make sure we get the goalkeeper in there as well. At GalaxyMom4. That's at GLXYMOM4. And then the goalkeeper, even though he's weird, can play as well. Kev, what else you got?
Yeah, that's just so phenomenal that you do that, and I praise you for doing that. It would be so easy for you to say, "Look, my son made it. I got through this with my kids. You guys figure out some way to do it on your own." But you haven't. What I did want to ask you though is, I've talked to a lot of moms and dads who have gotten their kids to this level. I had a long talk with Alex Morgan's dad about all the things that he and his wife used to have to do, taking the kids to get up at 4 a.m, taking the kids to tournaments and practice. That's what you did, and your son made it. And a lot of kids don't make it. Your son made it, and I just wondered. All of us are proud of our kids, whether they're plumbers or teachers or they work at McDonald's or whatever it is. But your kid, it made it to MLS and the U.S. national team. I'm wondering, a lot of that reflects on you, and you deserve a lot of the credit for that. But what's it like to watch your son achieve his dreams to this degree at such a young age?
I get emotional even now just thinking about it. It never stops being exciting. Like, I'm so proud of him that he's so young and achieving his dreams. And he set those goals at age 5. And I mean, how many of us achieve our dreams, by the time we're a teenager?
Right.
So it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I get nervous. I get chills. I cry all the time.
Yeah, I think I remember Jalen saying something like that in an interview. Yeah. He was talking about you and saying, I'm pretty sure she cried. And I'm like, okay, good. Yeah, there.
Oh, yeah. All the time.
well, I don't want, Kev, do you have anything else that you want to talk to Sarah about?
No, it's just, it really is a thrill getting to talk to you. I know you and I have spoken before, but I mean, some of the stuff, you are such an inspiration, that you just kept at it. And I know you have 3 other kids and some of those are playing soccer, right? And we may see them at some point. How was Jalen's injury, by the way? Are we going to see him on the field soon? Are you allowed to talk about that? Or are you sworn to secrecy?
I don't know if I'm sworn to secrecy, but I don't think that I'm the right person to ask. I know he misses being out there. I miss him being out there. He's doing everything possible to get back out there. We need to make playoffs for many reasons, but also hopefully he can get back out there by playoffs. It's just, one of those injuries that you got to just wait it out.
Yeah, it's very good. By the way, if Kevin would have had his dreams at 5 years old come true, he would have also been a soccer player, I'm sure. Right, Kevin? Wasn't that your thing? Or were you a long distance runner at 5?
Soccer wasn't even invented back then.
Oh, okay, good. Just wanted to check. Very good. Well, yeah.
I do want to mention one thing really quick. I don't know if you saw, but on October 19th, we're going to be opening our mini pitch in Lakewood as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's really exciting.
I mean, and that's something, and you can tell it means a lot to Jalen. I'm sure it means a lot to you, but just having a place for kids to play soccer in Lakewood, something that is, clean and nice and developed and there for their use, and not, a tennis court that you could possibly get kicked off of or other stuff like that, right? These are the important things, and if we're trying to get away from pay to play, having places where kids can just go and play is also part of that.
Yes, and I love that it's going to be branded with LA Galaxy, so we'll have, representation there always.
Yep, very good.
Another thing quickly is Sarah, Jalen has really taken after you. He is not, as you said, he's achieved his dream, but just like you and in concert with you, reaching back to help others. And, reminds me a lot of what Giassi's artist did for the community when he was here. And it's amazing that Jalen has the wisdom and the desire and everything else to do that at 20. I guess he gets a lot of that from you, but it's just incredible that he's out there not worrying about his own career, although that's going really well, but reaching back to help the next group of kids follow him.
Yeah, from the minute he signed his contract, that was always very important to him, to give back, to use his platform, and to do whatever he can for others.
It's well worth it. You can see that he enjoys playing. You can see that he, getting to help people, and it seems genuine from his heart. Seems genuine from your heart as well. And if we can ever be of service to you, you obviously know where to find us. All right.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We appreciate it, Sarah. Have a wonderful day, and we'll get you back on the show real soon. All right. There we go.
Thank you for the call.
There you go, Miss Sarah Neal, everybody's favorite soccer mom. I was going to ask her, Kevin, because I know how much you love wearing jerseys with players' names on it. I was going to ask her if she could get you a Jalen Neal jersey, so that way you can wear that.
That's one other male person I might wear that name on my back. All the things that he does.
The exceptions continue. It's I will not. That's just weird. But this guy probably Messi. I'd probably do
Roberto
Messi.
Clemente. No, it has to be beyond the pitch. Roberto Clemente might be a guy. There's that rum and coke again. You shouldn't be drinking on the air.
It is what it is. It's Pepsi, which is just the worst thing in the world. We were talking about that beforehand. Speaking of Pepsi, Efrain Alvarez. Off to the Xolos of Tijuana. We talked about it. We talked about the move getting ready to happen, and then it did happen. $2.2 million supposedly. So a great bit of business there, Kevin. I know you're wearing. Obviously, you have the Efrain Alvarez jersey that you again another exception that you wanted to make. For
no name on the back, but I mean, look at what's happened in the last 6 weeks. Efrain Alvarez, it wasn't playing, and so they got $2.2 million for him, which is great. They've added what we talked about. They added, when you look at Sharp and Fagundes and Cerrillo and Barrios and Yoshida, that's 4, maybe 5 starters that have been added, since the transfer window opened August 1st. And they did this while they were under sanction. Yeah. It's just, Will Kuntz, I don't know how much of this is Will Kuntz. I think a lot of it is Will Kuntz.
It feels like it, doesn't it? It feels, it feels creative and new and expansive and smart, and so for all those reasons, it feels like it couldn't possibly be anybody who was there. So it must be Will Kuntz. That's totally
amazing. Yeah. It's totally amazing. And you're going to look at this and say, oh well, yeah, none of those guys are Zlatan or a Chicharito. Hey, Billy Sharp scored 2 goals in 4 games. He's a veteran player who's a great clubhouse presence. Yoshida was captain of the Japanese national team in the World Cup. Fagundes has 350 caps in MLS. It's not like these are not the dredges. This is not the little sisters of the poor. He added some really important players. Yeah. Yes, they're not soccer Hall of Famers, all of them, but my gosh, they're already all of them making contributions.
Let's get to this game. LA Galaxy 2-2 St. Louis. A 0-2 start to the game for the LA Galaxy. Get behind the 8 ball rather quickly, as a matter of fact. 4th minute, and then 28th minute, 2-0. on both of those for St. Louis. The Galaxy go into halftime down 2 goals, come up, and then very, very slowly, but they get the penalty kick. Puig puts it in, and then they get the red card that helps them out. And eventually it's Billy Sharp in the 82nd who gets the game-tying goal. Really interesting game, Kevin. There's an overreaction, I think, that because all of these games are so important for the LA Galaxy, that this is lost points. And certainly, if you're trying to win all your home games, you're going to say, hey, you lost 2 points. You should have had 3 there, and you lost 2 points. And I understand that sentiment. I think it's valid. If you think that that's fair, then that's valid. The other flip side of this comes into the fact that when you look at this LA Galaxy team and what they were facing the number 1 team in the Western Conference, who they had played before in a similar situation, also got a draw, but that was on the road. But you had a very full-strength St. Louis side versus a very not full-strength side, plus international absences missing. You had that Raheem Edwards suspended on yellow cards. So even the starting lineup is completely affected by all the changes and all the injuries and everything that has gone on. And if you look at it, because we didn't even get to talk about it because Greg Vanney announced it on Friday, Caligari seems to be another season-ending injury. Now, is it really bad that it's going to take him, 12 months to come back? That we don't know yet. But season-ending, Kevin, right now is like, oh, is it going to be 6 weeks? Well, that's season-ending. It's going to be real fast in terms of what it is. But that seems to be the case. So Caligari's lost now. That's 4 season-ending injuries to a certain extent that it seems possible. Maybe Caligari is able to come back in the playoffs. We don't know exactly where we're at. But Vanney said it wasn't good. So that's 4 starters now that have gone down with season-ending injuries. There are multiple injuries throughout this season to people like Douglas Costa. Somebody tried to comment, Kevin, and said, the Galaxy really wasted their chances early in the season whenever they were healthy. And I said, they started the season without Chicharito and Douglas Costa because they were both injured, right? Those are the things that we have seen matriculate all the way from the beginning of the season all the way to the end of the season. The Galaxy being healthy has only been a thing for 3 games at a time, maybe, like at some section in there. So the fact that they're not just playing these games against teams that are good in the Western Conference, and they have LAFC coming up on Saturday, but they're also battling this war of attrition, right? They're literally trying to fight just to keep guys healthy enough to stay on the field this year. Then if you put that in the context, maybe the 2-2 coming from behind when you should have probably had 0 points when you go down 2-0, and you fight back, maybe the Galaxy saved their season with this game because 1 point was really important.
Everyone who came through the interview room said they were happy with the point. Greg Vanney said it's a good point, but they all said, every one of them said, we should have had 3. And that's the way the people feel in the locker room. They should have had 3. When you talk about the injury situation, it has a chance to get worse. Greg said afterwards that some people commented about how Riqui Puig did not seem to have his normal stellar game. And in fact, there was a giveaway at midfield that led to a goal that would have made it 3-0 before the half. That goal was called out by an offside correctly. But Riqui did not play well. He has a groin problem, according to Greg Vanney. Did not train at all last week. And Galaxy were not sure how far they could go. They said very early on, Riqui was looking to the bench and did not feel good. He told Greg at halftime he was going to go back out for the second half, and as he got warmer, he started to feel a little bit better. And so the first thought was, well, why didn't they take him off, in the 60th or 70th minute? Well, because they were losing. They had to keep him on. And remember, the tying goal didn't come to about the 83rd minute. He had to stay on for the whole game. He was all they had. But if this gets worse this weekend, I'm sure Greg knows today. Today was the regeneration day. I'm sure Greg knows what Ricky's situation is. If they were to lose him, that might be the biggest blow of all.
I already feel like the injuries are mounting enough to the point where they may be insurmountable. You might not be able to come back from this. I don't like dropping points at home. I don't think that that's a valid way for a team that's trying to press into the playoffs to make it. That being said, if the Galaxy can scrap and pick up points on the road, they can make up for some of the stuff that's happened at home, right? And we sort of looked at the 7-point week that the LA Galaxy had, but the last game was a draw at home, and it wasn't necessarily the win that everybody was looking for. The bottom line is the Galaxy have dropped points in every facet of the game this year, so it's not surprising to see them struggle in some of these ways. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say a couple of things. St. Louis has only lost once when they scored first, and they didn't lose, but it was a draw. The Galaxy came back. You talked about what a great team it was. A goalkeeper that leads the league in saves, and they beat him twice in the second half. But when you talk about dropping points, everyone talks about the Galaxy and their great streak. Since Chris Klein left, they are 5-1-6. Lost one time in 12 games since Chris Klein left. 4 unbeaten now since they came back from the Leagues Cup break. However, 5-1-6. That means they've dropped points in 7 of those 12 games.
Yeah.
And they're still 13th. They have 4 teams still to pass. They need 5 points to get into the playoffs. So, yeah, they're playing. They're not losing, but they're not winning. And as you said, when you need to pick up points, after a while, that's going to bite you in the butt.
It feels like it's right on that precipice, and then you have El Trafico coming up. That's a whole nother story. And quite honestly, I'm not sure that anything really matters, including form, whenever you get into El Trafico. But that's going to be obviously a really big chance for the Galaxy to pick up points. You're still at home, quote unquote, in terms of you get to sleep in your own bed. Except sometimes they go in hotels for the night before that game. But they go there. They get to play. They get to sleep in their own bed. There's no travel that they have to worry about outside of the traffic that will take them up to BMO. So that's something to look at. Just looking at the starting lineup in this game. Dejan Joveljic gets a start again. Not sure that's going to happen too much longer here. So keep your eye on Dejan Joveljic. We have talked a lot about him getting a chance, Kevin, to play for his meal ticket, right? If you get you're going to get the chances, you better start burying them. I thought he had some really good looks in this game. 3 or 4 really good looks. He didn't bury one of them. In fact, somebody tried to correct me, and they said, well, how can you say that Joveljic is going to lose his starting job whenever, he had 3 or 4 really good looks? Yeah, how many of those went in the back of the goal? How many did Billy Sharp put in? It's that type of thing, and I think you can get now, and I think Sharp is close enough to get 60, 65 minutes out of Billy Sharp, and then have Joveljic come in off the bench. That is a gamble, though, because you can get 90 minutes out of Joveljic if you need to, Kevin, right? I'm not sure you can get 90 minutes out of Billy Sharp. If you need to. So there's still some things that are going there. And as you and I were talking about beforehand, he has 2 multi-goal games. Both of them came in starts, both of them against LAFC. That's the guy you want to probably start against LAFC. I'm not sure you pull him. He seems to get up for those games. So, but just looking at Joveljic there, an interesting case study, especially in this game. The other thing, Tyler Boyd, Riqui Puig, Douglas Costa back from the dislocated shoulder. Went, what was it, 60, 70 minutes? If I remember here, I'll look it up real quick. 68 minutes, so almost 70 minutes for Douglas Costa. People asking why Douglas Costa was pulled out of that game, Kevin, because he was just coming back from a dislocated shoulder. I'm sure he's not 100%. I thought he was good in spurts. He's definitely needed on that field for the LA Galaxy as much as they can get him. So I thought that was sort of an interesting little take from Douglas Costa and what he was able to do and came back really quickly from that particular injury. Uri Rosell, Edwin Cerrillo in there. Cerrillo had a bad first half. Julian Alde, you had Chris Mavinga, you had Maya Yoshida, you had Mauricio Cuevas, and then Jonathan Bond at the back. My big deal on the defense, Kev, what did you think of Cuevas? What did you think of Aude?
I thought Cuevas was really good going forward, not so much dropping back.
That's astute. That's exactly what I would have said. 100%. Yeah. Did you hear a lot of people saying that he reminds them of Julian Araujo in some ways?
Yeah, but the thing that I thought interesting is St. Louis seemed to be very aggressive at the start and really went after that Galaxy back line. But when you look at the stats at the end of the game, and granted that they parked the bus at the end when they had the lead in just 10 men, but the Galaxy at 70% possession, they outshot St. Louis 20-5. St. Louis only put 3 shots on goal. Yeah. 2 of them went in. The Galaxy just dominated that game, and the low shots on goal. I mean, I know it's a product of the possession.
Right.
The low shots on goal for a team like St. Louis, a smart team, a veteran team, going against a really makeshift back line. I just thought they would have spent a lot more time sort of peppering the Galaxy back line and trying to drive in there, and it just never materialized. And again, maybe that's part the Galaxy forced that on them and denied them those opportunities. But it just seemed like in the very beginning that this was going to be a real one-sided game in St. Louis's favor.
To me, it's a classic St. Louis, right? Because they're such a counterattacking team. You look at their season-wide stats, and they only have 44% possession, right? I mean, they're just a team that 3 passes and it goes in the net. The thing that I thought was very St. Louis of them in this particular game is when you looked at expected goals as well. St. Louis had a .7 expected goals but scored twice. The LA Galaxy had 2 for their expected goals and scored twice, right? And so you look at sort of how St. Louis is, ratcheted up and how they score. They convert their chances. They have real offensive threats. I will say that the Galaxy is it's always goals by commission for the LA Galaxy, right? Tyler Boyd scores some. Riqui Puig scores some. You're getting now a couple here and there from Billy Sharp. And I even like to argue you're not getting any from the strikers, except that Billy Sharp scored the game-tying goal. And then over the last 2 games, I think they have 3 goals between the strikers, but 2 of those came on penalty kicks, right? And maybe 3 games. But 2 of those came on penalty kicks. So where are the strikers still? And in that first half, I have never seen a Galaxy team so frustrated with Dejan Joveljic. There was a lot of looks, a lot of different ways, fingers being pointed, people being angry when they're looking at Dejan Joveljic. And to me, he deflated that team in the first half. And the first half was atrocious from the LA Galaxy. St. Louis ran him right over, Kev, especially attacking behind Cuevas. It was too easy for them, attacking down the middle, scoring goals, doing the stuff that you see. But to me, Cuevas and Aude, they have some big shoes to step into, and they need to step into those. Granted, they will get some help coming back from international break. Kelvin Leerdam likely to slot into a right back position. Raheem Edwards will return. So the Galaxy get a little bit better, I think, on defense whenever they go play LAFC this weekend. But this was a bit of an S show for the first 45 minutes. And the Galaxy are lucky that it wasn't 3-0. And you pointed out, Kev, it should have been 3-0, except they went offside and correctly called that ball back. So I don't know where to put this. I mean, I think the players probably got it right, Kev, and you talked to everybody. It's, hey, we're happy with the point, but, what was that first half? The Galaxy got run over in that first half, and they can't afford to have that happen for the rest of these games because it puts them in a hole too quickly.
Well, the Galaxy have 33 goals this season, 9 from strikers. 2 of those from Billy Sharp, who's only played 4 games. And when you look at Joveljic, he has 3 goals in over 1,300 minutes. Preston Judge has 3 goals in 638 minutes. So Joveljic has played more than twice as much and has the same number of goals. They're getting a lot of production on the midfield. Tyler Boyd and Riqui Puig and Douglas Costa with a lot of assists, but they're getting nothing up front. And the thing with Joveljic is, I know he wants to play. He's made that apparent. He had his opportunity. He's been really productive off the bench. And you make a good point about LAFC that maybe this is not the week to give Billy Sharp the start. But Joveljic, we know he's effective off the bench. We're finding out he's not effective as a starter.
Did you?
Maybe he's just one of those guys who comes off the bench and can change the game. And we've seen that in other places.
It was funny because that is the argument. I would have made that argument as well. I went and did the stats for him in terms of goals per game, right? So not goals per minute, because that can be swayed. My whole thing is when you bring a guy in, whether he's a starter or a sub, you expect him to score, right? So it doesn't matter whether he has 10 minutes or 90 minutes. You want to see sort of what the deal is, right? And basically, I'm saying that within, a hundredth of a decimal point, that Dejan Joveljic is technically better as a starter in terms of scoring goals whenever he starts than he is as a substitute. Now, goals per minute, obviously, he's way higher whenever he's a substitute and comes on. So I really think this year is not so much Dejan Joveljic being forced to start so much. I really feel that this year it's Dejan Joveljic not converting chances. Because look at those chances in the first half. Galaxy could have easily had, and I think that they would have had Joveljic scored, Kev, a 1-1 game, right? He had a header in that first half that was fairly wide open, and he tried to put it on frame. And if he puts that on frame, there's a good chance that it goes in. He also had a couple shots that he hit directly at Berkey, and Berkey made some saves. In fact, he had 2 of those that I remember off the top of my head. If he converts one of those, I feel like the score isn't 2-0 at halftime. I feel like the score is probably 1-1. Right? And so my whole argument is if the LA Galaxy get a 9, if they can get something out of Billy Sharp where he can score some goals, it changes the complexion of games. And it's a funny thing that Greg Vanney says, and every coach says, is goals change games, right? That type of thing happens. The problem is the Galaxy a lot of times, unless they score first, which really does sort of change a game, right? They struggle. And they struggle mightily. And I track sort of the score first and all that fun stuff that sort of comes with it. But the bottom line is that The LA Galaxy went down 2-0 in this game and fought back for a draw. To me, that still says something about this team. It still says that they're not done, even in their wounded state, even missing players. But they're 0-9-4 whenever they allow the first goal, Kevin. 2 of those times have been against St. Louis where they've come from behind to actually get a point. So I don't know how to place this game in terms of, should you be optimistic that the Galaxy came back, Kev, or should you be worried that the injuries don't seem to be slowing and the pace of games is still coming quickly?
Yes. Yes to both of those. I asked Greg about that after the game, and I said, you fell behind 2-0. This is a game in May that, just pack up the tent and let's go home at halftime because you're not coming back. But you did come back, and it would have been so easy. They were, as you said, they were getting run out of the building. They were playing the best team in the conference. There was no reason to expect them to come back. We know St. Louis's record when they score first. Again, no reason to come back. They're playing the hottest goalkeeper in the league. Yet they do come back and they get a point. Yes, it's a point, but it's better than 0 points. And Greg said, I thought that showed what this team is all about. We've been dealt a bad hand, throughout the season with injuries and a lot of other things off the field. It was a gutty point. We came back and we got a point. We didn't give up. He said, I think this carries us forward because you can look at the playoff race the same way. Hey, we're really down. We've got a long way to go. We're not going to be able to make it up, but we're not going to quit, and they're going to keep going. And so, Greg was trying to take as many positive things out of the game as he could. And yes, they dropped 2 points, but they didn't. Again, go back to May. Go back before they started this little streak. This is a game they're not even in. It probably winds up 4 or 5-0.
Yeah, it does. Let me get to some super chats that came in earlier. Executive producer Herb, $23.45. If you notice, that's 2345. Josh wishing the family a healthy and speedy recovery. Thank you, Herb. Hope you stay healthy as well. I will. I'll just try to leave them as much as possible. Where do you normally hang out at halftime? It depends. If I'm at home, it's in this room. If I'm at the stadium, it's at the bottom of the press box stairs, which is at the top of section 108. So you can see me at halftime. Kevin usually pops his head down there. And then Herb says, hi, Kevin. Appreciate all your work and articles. So somebody does. Maybe he's the one who reads your stuff.
That's Kevin. The guy. That's the one subscriber. We got to go over to his house and have a party.
That sounds good to me. Lasso's Optimism, $13 super chat. Hello, guys. 13, by the way, Taylor Swift's favorite number, just in case you didn't know. Hello, guys. A tough but fair point earned Sunday. Am I wrong to feel real progress is being made? Do LA drop their heads and lose this game before all the acquisitions? He just asking the question that you just answered, saying, are you going to get that way? Is it going to be that way if it happens in May? And I agree, it's not, right? So this is different.
You know what? A couple of things, though. We just talked about all the players coming in, 4 or 5 starters, depending on what day, and guys that are looked at, Yoshida, Sharp, Fagundes, guys that are looked at to be leaders, they weren't here in May.
Right.
Fagundes said yesterday, he said, I'm in here playing with these guys, and I'd say, how are they 13th in the conference? This team is way better than that. Well, guess what, Diego? If you were here in May, you would know why this team is in 13th place. So it essentially is a new team that doesn't carry the baggage of that start. And, Sharp, talking about his scoring, you look at the goal the tying goal yesterday, Sharp scoring, Fagundes with the free kick with Rosell in between. 2 of those 3 guys weren't even on the team at the start of August. Yeah. And Sharp reminds me a lot of, it'd be interesting to see if you agree, reminds me a lot of Chicharito in that he's smart, he's very active in the box, and seems to wind up in the right place. He's kind of a poacher in that way.
Oh, yeah, he's a poacher. Absolutely. He's one of those guys, but you just want him there. And I love it. So Sharp comes into that game, and you and I were there in the stadium whenever he runs into the post, right? He
like seconds after he came off the bench.
Seconds after he comes off the bench, just runs smack dab into the post. You're like, oh, that guy's dead. He just died. And he hops back up and he's fine. And then in this game, he comes onto the game and runs into the goalkeeper immediately. And I'm just like, man, just stay out of his way. He looks like he has pointy elbows and that he hurts when he hits you, right? It's just like all of those things. It's all I see whenever he comes forward is like knees and elbows and foreheads coming at me, and I'm like, I want to get out of it. He will punish people, and I'd love to see him be able to punish a defense over like 60, 70 minutes, because it's going to be physical every time. Every time he runs, his shoulder is going to come through you. Every time he moves, he's going to be physically, against you. It's always a tug of war, always a battle, and he always seems to be annoying that way.
And does that factor into Greg Vanney's decision-making when he picks a starting lineup for LAFC? Because, I'm sure Sharp has said to him, look, I'm not going to run through a brick wall for you, but I'll run into a goalpost or a goalkeeper, drop of a hat. I mean, because we know LAFC, their game plan for the Galaxy always is, let's get physical. And they try to a couple times they've had success beating up Riqui Puig. Do you put Sharp out there, sort of the enforcer? a guy to sort of make sure, like, you pick on my guy, I'm going after your guy.
Yeah, I saw his quote. He goes, the boys have told me, the lads, I believe, the lads have told me that it's a hostile place. And I kind of like that, right? It's like, I don't know, man. He's just everything you sort of want in a player. I talked about Tyler Boyd and him becoming a fan favorite. Billy Sharp's right there. By the way, I think Billy Sharp's coming back next year too. So just off the top of my head, I think Billy Sharp comes back next year. He seems like the guy who's sort of like, I just got started. Like, give me another year, right? And all that stuff. We'll see how that all plays out. But I thought that was interesting. I would like to say something. Being someone who is relegated to watching this game on Apple TV, I do feel as though on Sunday in an evening game that they decided to just have people who have never worked a soccer game in their life, produce that game. Kevin, even the great Joe Tutino, because I was listening to Joe as the home audio on this. Even the great Joe Tutino said something, and I'm sure he wouldn't want me to classify it as this, but this is how I took it. Even Joe was like, when are they going to show a dang replay? And he didn't say it that way, but he's like, we're still waiting for that replay. And I'm like, yeah, Joe, everybody's waiting for the replay. The possible offside goal that was the first goal that St. Louis scored never got a down the line replay. There's considerations there. There were two leading passes. One of them looked like it was probably onside. The other one was borderline. And it may have been onside, but the replay was never shown. They kept cutting to close-ups during play. So, like normally during play, when everything's wide, you want to stay wide on things because you don't want to be miss movement on the field, right? That's how you do with soccer. Stay wide, and then you push in for isolation shots like during breaks or before a free kick or that type of thing. That's whenever you're going to change angles and do stuff. And then you always...
Well, let me ask you, since you were watching on TV, the last goal, the Billy Sharp goal, because in the stadium, I don't know if they referenced this on TV or what they were showing, but in the stadium, they scored the goal. Everybody celebrated. There was no flag. They went back to midfield. Everything was there. And then I looked up, and all of a sudden, Berkey had the ball.
Yeah.
And up on the scoreboard, it said goal disallowed, offside. And then the referee blew his whistle. The ball came back to the center circle, and the goal was good. What happened?
So Joe Tutino said that the instructions that they get apparently from MLS whenever stuff like that, because they get notified of what's going on. He said they were messed up during that game, that they were taking too long or that we didn't know what was going on, the whole deal. And so all we knew on the broadcast was that it was a VAR review, right? And we're waiting for that VAR. We never, on the broadcast, we never knew that it said goal disallowed type thing. And Apple, in true fashion, didn't show a great replay on it, right? Again, I don't know if they don't have the cameras to do it, Kevin, but it certainly feels as if they don't have the intelligence to do it. Because you and I know as soon as there's a goal, one is, was there a pass that led into that might be offside? Let's go back and watch that first, because that's the most important thing. Will this get called back because of an offside? And then you can sort of work your way back to that in case there's other things you need to look at, like, oh, was there a foul on the lead up to that? I mean, the replay guys have to be almost like the VAR guys, right? So if you're producing a game anymore, you have to be like, can we find something wrong with this goal? Let's watch replays right away. And on the first St. Louis goal, it's like they wanted to show you them celebrating 7 different times from 7 different angles, but never the lead-up pass, never the lead-in pass, never the touch for the goal. It was ridiculous, and it played that way out. There was a couple times where Joe Tutino's talking play-by-play, and they have an isolation on a player who's back behind the play, or they're showing replays. And we don't know, showing replays during game time is a kind of a no-no. You have to sort of figure out when you can do it, when you can't. And most of the time is you can't do it. Multiple times in this game, Joe Tutino's giving you play-by-play, and the video is showing you the 7th replay of a shot that went 7 yards wide.
The Sharp goal, there should be no replay because it was a free kick. There wasn't a lead up to the goal, but don't somebody somewhere in some studio, whether it's a VAR guy or someone back in New York or whatever, don't they review every goal like the NHL does? Even an empty net goal in the NHL gets reviewed by somebody.
Every goal gets reviewed. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And they have all the angles there, and they're in charge of their own production for that, right? They get raw feeds in, and then they're able to do that. But anyway, Apple has been okay in a lot of ways. It needs to be the biggest improvement. It's like they have people who don't know soccer producing these, and that is what I'm guessing they're doing. Whether or not they're third partying this out to people who are like, oh, do you have a truck? Oh, well, then you can produce this sporting event. I'm sure it's just like football. It's not. And you need to know what to do and how to do it. And whoever was doing that game last night, it was atrocious. Not only mentioned at the very beginning, you know how there was sun on the field at the very beginning of the game? You know, whenever there's sun and shadows, somebody has to be on the slider the exposure slider in order to be like, oh, it went into the sun. Hurry, drop the exposure. So there's a lot of quick sliding in and out type thing. Whoever was on the slider fell asleep for the first 10 minutes of that game because the Galaxy would go into that light area and they just disappear. It was gone. You knew the ball was over there and knew the player was over there. You couldn't see anybody. And about 5-6 minutes into that game, finally somebody was like, oh, I know where the slider is.
Well, I had a conversation with a former national team player who's now a broadcaster on an unrelated topic, and then he jumped on Apple and just ripped Apple for a long part of the conversation, and then stopped and said, "But you know what? Let's give him a chance to figure it out. Let's not criticize him yet. Let's give him a chance to figure it out." So he's seeing the same thing you are, but he's saying, you know what? This is their first season. Let's see if they're not good next year, then we know that there's a problem.
Yeah, they need to be better. If they need me, I mean, I know I can help. Just bring me in. I'll tell you where you screw up. I can have a little buzzer, and every time you screw up, I'll electrocute the person who's running the replays, right? That type of thing. We'll fix it. But anyway, it's just weird to see them not get some of that stuff right. Let's go to some of the stats and some of the things that we had covered in this. The Galaxy are sort of at. I thought it was interesting. The 2-2 game. Sort of coming here, 7-10-9 now for the LA Galaxy. I say the Galaxy have trouble scoring goals, and then you go back and you look and you see, 3 goals scored, for a win, 2 goals scored in a loss, 3 goals scored in a win, 3 goals scored in a win, 0-0 draw, 2 goals scored in a draw. It feels like they're scoring, but I still don't feel like there's a consistent scoring presence from really anybody on the team outside of maybe Tyler Boyd right now is probably the hottest guy out there, but Billy Sharp coming up right behind him. So that's an interesting one. The point or better, right? How many times, what's the percentage the Galaxy get a point or better? They're now over 60%, 61.5% where they get a point or better, but their winning percentage, 26.9%. 2017 was 23.5%, Kevin. That's not exactly one you want to try to replicate, and I think that's the lowest one. The Galaxy's winning percentage was lowest in 2017. We talked about that, franchise worst for the LA Galaxy in that particular year. The Galaxy right now at 26.9%. So not great, Bob, as they say. Let's see, what's some other things I can sort of pull up here? Oh, you always like the skyscraper one, Kevin, so I'll bring up the skyscrapers. Through the 26 games, Galaxy have 30 points. At this time last year, Kevin, they had 37 points, 7 points better. Last year at this point, 8 points better in the first year under Greg Vanney, right? So 38 points, 37 points through 26 games for 2021, 2022, and now 30 points through 2023. Just, again, keeping your eye on things. Galaxy better than 2017 at this point, better than 2008, better than 2007, and better than 1997. There aren't. It's fun that I can pick those out and say which ones they're better than because it doesn't take that long. There's only a couple seasons the Galaxy are better than.
And with 8 games left, they need 1.5 points per game to get to that magical 42-point barrier, which we believe is what you're going to need to do to get to 9th. But, the thing is they're still 13th. They were 14th in May. They're 13th now. They were 5-1-6 and picked up 1 spot. And there's 4 teams in front of them. And that I know it's only 5 points that they need, but there's 4 teams. So that means, let's say Portland starts to slide back a little bit and they pass them. Well, there's other teams they still have to pass. The thing is, they're not going to get caught from behind. They don't have to look back and see what Colorado's doing. It's focus on what's ahead of them. But, those teams, some of them are going to get hot, some of them are going to get cold, and they all need to go cold at the same time if the Galaxy are going to catch them. Yeah,
but, also, the Western Conference is mediocre. And we keep seeing it. That was the number 1 team in the Western Conference coming into a team that was 13th in the Western Conference. It looked like St. Louis should have run over the LA Galaxy. Did they? They didn't. And it didn't happen the first time that they were in St. Louis either, where the best team in the Western Conference was going to run over the 13th or 14th best team in the Western Conference. So I just can't, there's just not any separation in the Western Conference. There's none. So the Galaxy 4 points off that last playoff spot. I don't know, maybe Dallas doesn't win another game for the whole time, right? Maybe the Galaxy start jumping over, but the bottom line is you look at the schedule, Galaxy have a chance to play all these people who are in front of them and around them it's all right there for them to take, starting with LAFC coming up this weekend. And LAFC's way up that leaderboard, but the way that they've been playing lately, they could find themselves much lower on that leaderboard if they continue to sort of play that way. So everything's sort of more in play than everybody thinks there is right now. And the Western Conference is just one big pile of meh right now, which will make it exciting down the stretch. And I think it keeps the LA Galaxy sort of involved in this season.
Well, I think what the Galaxy say to themselves is, look, we need to take care of our business. It doesn't matter what happens to Portland, Vancouver, San Jose, whoever. If we don't win, if we don't take care of business, they could all lose the rest of the season. But if we do too, we're not going to catch them. What they have to say is, look, 1.5, that's our target. We need to get 1.5 a game if we want to get to 42. But a draw is not 1.5. That means we lost ground. And the Galaxy still do have that game in hand, by the way.
They do.
I think it's one game in hand. They, that could be very decisive. But again, 1.5 points a game. If that's your target, a draw doesn't get that done. And a draw at home especially doesn't get that done.
The big deal was that before I called it sort of within the margin of error, which was like just a goofy way of saying that the Galaxy with 2 games in hand and 5 points back behind the playoff spot knew that if they won both their games in hand, they could make up those 5 points without anything else happening, right? So you could have played your way into the playoffs if you get both of those games in hand and you stayed in pace with everything, right? Well, now they're outside of that, right? Because they have 4 points to the line, and they only have 1 game in hand, which is 3 points, so they're +1, which means now they have to pick up points in other places and keep pace with everything that is going on. Like you said, Kevin, if everybody wins around them, that doesn't help. You better win, otherwise you lost ground again. And this weekend is absolutely one of those places where if the Galaxy can't keep up, they could find themselves not just 4 points back, but 7 points back. And that could happen quickly.
And that's a good point. Yesterday was a free game. It was the makeup game from July 4th, game rescheduled. It was one of the games in hand. The Galaxy essentially got a free throw. They made one. They missed the 3-pointer, or they didn't get the 3-pointer. So, yeah, it's good. Again, Greg Vanny was right. It's a good point. We got a point that no one else could compete for because this was a game in hand. But imagine if they got 3 points. They'd be right there. They'd be 1 point back.
1 point. Yeah. Well, there'd be 2 points back, right? Because they dropped 2, right? So they'd be 2 points back right now. And that means that with the other game in hand, you could have, if you kept pace, jumped into the playoff spot. Now that's not a place you have to win. Listen, you still had to win a whole bunch of games. It doesn't really change that much, but it makes it steeper. You talked about it, 1.5 points per game, right? That means you have to win every other game, right? That's what you have to do from here on out.
And they need help because somebody needs to beat those teams ahead of them. And the good thing is a lot of those teams are going to play each other, both fighting for the playoff spot. So the Galaxy needs some help. But there's a lot of teams ahead of them that are motivated to help them because they need to win. They need to beat their opponents to get into the playoffs as well.
Here's your schedule. LAFC, El Trafico coming up on Saturday, then 9:20. So 4 days later, LA Galaxy hosts Minnesota. Then it's 9:24, LA Galaxy away to Austin. And then 9:30, LA Galaxy hosting the Portland Timbers. Finally into October, 4 games in October. Seattle away, Minnesota away, so still playing Minnesota twice here down the stretch, and then the LA Galaxy with that makeup game against Real Salt Lake on October 14th during an international break, and then it's Fan Appreciation Day, which is generally a horrible thing for the LA Galaxy whenever they host Dallas. So that's where we're sitting right now, and I'm glad Kevin could leaf through all of his paper and everybody here.
Yes, well, I wanted to look and see if the Seattle and Minnesota dates. I'm wondering, I bet you they don't come home between that. Wednesday in Seattle, wouldn't you just go straight to Minnesota? You're already there. You're halfway there.
Yeah, I would. Well, you're not, but I mean, it's a right angle, but I don't know because
and you said they're gonna host Fan Appreciation Day. Don't they generally host their Fan Appreciation Day? I mean, it would be odd to have their Fan Appreciation Day at a road game.
Well, it's funny because my chart that I did, and I didn't put it out for this one because I will do it whenever we get closer, is I have the last home game, which is Fan Appreciation Day, and then I have like the last game, right? Which is, if it's not Fan Appreciation Day, if it's not at home and it's on the road, then how have they done? But playing Dallas on Fan Appreciation Day just doesn't give anybody. By the way, Dallas, the team who is currently in the last playoff spot, right, is sitting right there. That's where it gets nervous, Kev. That's where everything sort of sits there. If we look, St. Louis at the top there, right, with 48 points, Seattle at 41, LAFC at 40, Salt Lake at 40. Galaxy have games against, just played St. Louis, will have a game against Seattle coming up, have a game against LAFC coming up, have a game against Real Salt Lake coming up. Don't play Houston for the rest. Don't play Vancouver for the rest, I don't think. And then Minnesota twice. and then Dallas once in there. They also have a game against Austin and a game against Portland. Right, so I mean, it's all the team. One, when you're at the bottom of the table, you do tend to play all those teams above you, right? Because there's only one team below the LA Galaxy, which is Colorado, and they're done playing them. So that's one of those. Your schedule gets a lot harder whenever you're a sucky team. That's the same realization is that whenever you're at the bottom of the table, Kevin, you end up playing people above you who you want to take points from, right?
Well, I was talking to Damian Calhoun yesterday after the game, and we both kind of came to the conclusion that it's really difficult to see how that Dallas game doesn't just decide everything for both teams.
Right. Yeah. It feels that way. It feels everybody also is feeling that nervousness sort of coming down for that game.
And would it not be possible? I mean, there's so many scenarios you can't really say, but there's a way that they each play one another, and then they both get into the playoffs because someone else loses, and then they play each other again the next week for that play-in game. They could finish 8th, 9th, and play again.
Very well could. And then the higher seed would host, and all
right.
that fun. So, just great. Thanks for throwing that in there to the mix of everybody's anxieties and all that sort of stuff is there. Again, LA Galaxy heading up to BMO Stadium to take on LAFC and El Trafico coming up on Saturday. It's a 7:30 p.m. TV start time, 7:39 p.m. kickoff time, so just a 9-minute lead-in on Apple TV MLS Season Pass. That's where you can find it. We will have a show on Thursday to get you ready for that game. LA Galaxy, though, still in 13th because they suck so bad, Kevin, that even the number of unbeatens and wins and everything else they've had since Chris Klein was fired, right, still won't get them out of 13th place. So close. They're getting closer. Eventually, whenever it starts happening, it's going to start being like, oh, they passed this team this week and this team this week. And like it's going to be one of these quick things where they were 13th and now they're 8th. It's going to happen within like a week's period that they're all going to jump.
Well, there's a team in the other conference that is in 13th, I think still in 13th place, fighting for a playoff spot, right? Miami. And they have a good player, Messi.
They're in 14th because they have an extra team in the Eastern Conference. So they're even further bet down.
Then in the penultimate place in the standings. I saw someone on social media today making the argument that the Galaxy are actually probably the team that's going to make the playoffs between them and Miami. That even with Lionel Messi, the Galaxy are better positioned to make the playoffs. I don't know if I would take that bet, but that was interesting that the Galaxy. Someone thinks the Galaxy without Messi are better than Inter Miami with Messi.
Well, I mean, it's a well-known fact that Billy Sharp has more MLS goals than Lionel Messi. So that's very well. I don't know if that's
true.
I don't know if it's true, but I think it is true, just based on the number of Leagues Cup games versus MLS games and all that fun stuff. So that was the fun little stat that.
But Messi just bought a $10.5 million house, and I bet you Billy Sharp didn't have one of those.
He didn't need one. He doesn't need to be ostentatious about that. He's probably living in a hotel room right now and enjoying it, right? Gets room service on the reg. He's good to go. So not a problem. Anything else you want to get to?
No, I want to thank Sarah for coming on. That was great. One of my heroes.
She's
kind of cool to talk to her.
I don't know if people realize how rare a position she sort of finds herself in to be able to not influence, because I don't like sort of the influence type thing, but be able to interact with people and to be willingly able to interact with fans. And it takes a special player to also have like a special parent in that, right? Like, because if you're a real divisive player, it would be more difficult for your parent to be on social media because people would be like, hey, your kid sucks and all this stuff. And I'm sure she gets that too. And seems like she could probably handle herself just fine. But I feel like the combination of Jalen and Sarah together is what makes that really special. So yeah, it was great having her on.
I have talked to parents from a lot of players that have made it, come from humble backgrounds, and they begin out like, thank God we made it, thank the Lord, and we worked hard, and we're so humble. And then after a couple of seasons, they're like, we don't want to talk to the LA Times anymore. We're bigger than this. I don't see Sarah ever going there, and I love the fact that her desire to give back, that Jalen has embraced it as well. And we both know a lot of things that Jalen had done even when he was on Galaxy 2 with, there was a whole big thing with immigrants. And then during COVID, where he would do raise material or take donations to different places. He was doing that when he was a Galaxy 2 guy. This is not Jalen Neal, the national team player. Nope. He's been doing this all along. He's just continuing to do it.
By the way, Gary came back. This is a great line, Gary. Yeah, I think it might be the best line of the outside of speaking of Pepsi. Let's talk about Efrain Alvarez. That one I thought was a pretty high bar to set, but Gary may have cleared that one here pretty steady. He goes, all Billy Sharp needs is his Costco membership, right? That's it. That's all he needs. So correct, Gary. Correct. You know,
he remembers the first press conference.
He does. So it was really good. So all right, if you are looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter on Twitter, it's at kbaxter11. Head on over to latimes.com. That's where you can find him. All of his writing on soccer, all that fun stuff is there. Has an interesting take on Bruce Arena. If you've been following the Bruce Arena saga, that's a fun one to sort of sink your teeth into. So check that out. Check that out over on latimes.com. If you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at Guesman, at Galaxy Podcast, at Galaxy Podcast on Threads, cornerofthegalaxy.com. That's where you can find all of our podcasts, all our fun stuff. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that fun stuff. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell everybody where you can find us and where you can listen. All right, that's what we got. Another show coming up on Thursday as we get ready for El Trafico on Saturday. Glad everybody is here with us. Hope everybody is doing well. Thank you for all the kind words about my family. They'll all survive. All right. For Mr. Kevin the Panda Baxter, I'm Josh Patrick Guesman. You've been listening. You've been watching to Corner of the Galaxy from the box on cornerofthegalaxy.com.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast, and be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.